Karen Purves, the author of Gratitude Prompts, due to be published in February 2019. She wrote the book to show others the power of gratitude to turn your life around. Her first introduction to gratitude was just after she had left her marriage, which started a chain reaction of events that would see her homeless a year later. It was a huge shock how a highly educated person with career success, MD of marketing, could end up in 1 year without a job, a home, and even friends stepped aside. That was 20 years ago. 5 years ago, the death of her mother started a new chain of events, including the sudden death of her cherished daughter at the age of 22. Would history repeat itself? Having practiced gratitude throughout the intervening years, this time Karen sought the gems in the darkness rather than being overwhelmed. The gems lit the path, urging her to change countries, do something different with her life, and make new friends. The big difference between these two events is purely mindset. 20 years ago, Karen went into a free fall, unable to understand or foresee where the unfolding events were taking her. Now she has complete trust that how we respond is the key to what shows up and how events, even ones we are bystanders to, shape us. Stay tuned for my interview with Karen.
Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. I am your host, Emmett Muckles, and I thank you every day that at least one person can hear my voice. You have no idea how much I appreciate the time and place that I am in so that I can be with you. Now, I want to tell you guys something because I thought about this on the way here for this. You know, oftentimes we really have these episodes about human beings, and sometimes we even hate them. But imagine what life would be like on this planet without humans if you were the only one. It's not a life worth living. So remember, they're here for a reason. But today, I have Karen Purves on the line with me. Speaking of being appreciative of those around you, we are going to talk about how gratitude makes life all that much better. Hi, Karen.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How was your day? You're in Wednesday time zone and I'm in Tuesday time zone.
Well, I can tell you that Wednesday is pretty good. The sun is shining and it's pretty warm here. I've got to say, we're going to be around about 30.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. It's cold here. Actually, we're having a heat wave. So in Fahrenheit, we are up to 40 degrees. 30. Yeah. That's a heat wave. That's an absolute heat wave.
Okay.
But you have a book that's coming out February 2019, Gratitude Prompts.
Absolutely. That's right.
And this wasn't some kind of overnight sensation. This wasn't just something that you're like, oh, I'm just going to write a book. This came out of life experience for you. I mean, you went through some things here, as I said in your bio, and you ended up homeless. You know, tell me about your journey. Tell me what brought you to now.
Okay. So I was just being ordinary, you know, I say ordinary, you know, I had a reasonably good career. I was an MD of a marketing college. I had a great lot of education. But I had a dissatisfaction. And that dissatisfaction was an unhappiness in my marriage. So I thought, oh, that's all right. I'll leave my marriage. I've got this great job. And I've got these great kids. It'll be okay. I didn't think, actually, it didn't occur to me that anything horrible could possibly happen, right? I was just going to leave my marriage, carry on without my marriage. And something really shocking happened, that within 6 weeks of me leaving the marriage, I lost my job.
You didn't see it coming.
So, no. I was in the board meeting and they decided that, they were going to vote me off the board. And I mean, I did get legal compensation. So what they did was unlawful. So I had to fight that, and get recompensed.
Mm-hmm.
But, when you're making big changes, you do sort of think about the prongs of a chair, the old milking chair, which has got 3 legs rather than 4 legs. And you're sort of thinking, okay, if I take one of my legs away or make it into a 3-legged chair. And of course, the job was actually one of my legs.
That's a good analogy.
And then I had 2 legs. And you try sitting on a chair with 2 legs, it's dodgy. And, I then picked up some academic work, so that sort of propped up the 3rd leg so that I was okay. But it wasn't going to work. It wasn't what my plaster approach to life in that first year wasn't going to be sustainable for the forthcoming, for the further 5 years or so. But what then happened was I thought that I would go for a bit more of a change. And so I left I went on a trip to Mexico to, I suppose in a way, find myself. Now, I mean,
a reset.
So yeah, let's try and do that. And I came back. I was living in the UK at this time, and I came back and I had purpose, and it was nothing to do with what I was doing. So I effectively turned my back on all that I had been doing. So I was in business, I was marketing, and I decided that in this trip to Mexico, which took 2 months, so I was there for 2 months, rather, it wasn't a 2-week trip. I then decided that my life purpose was about liberating others.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, that's okay. But actually then I thought, if I'm going to liberate others, I have to liberate myself.
That's a good point. Did you realize before, that actual point that you were kind of in a box yourself, that you hadn't explored yourself enough to be free and help others?
No, I'd done enough. By that time, I'd done enough work to know that, to have that insight that to liberate others, I have to actually do a lot more work on myself. Because I had met a lot of people who were supposedly liberating others. And when you drill down to them, they'd done a little bit of work on themselves, and they were telling you how to live even though they didn't live it.
That sounds like the internet right now.
And that's what I didn't want. I didn't want someone to scratch away at my life and then go, charlatan. It's not going to work. But
one thing that is, and I literally had these thoughts, it's like I was channeling our conversation. Not that this is kind of off the cuff and it's kind of serendipitous in the fact that I was thinking that we as people can always see the faults and the solutions for other people far better than we can see them for ourselves. Even if we're totally messed up, we can give the best advice to others, but we have a blind spot for ourselves sometimes.
Except that when you give advice to other people, that's actually the very thing you need to be doing for yourself. And that's one of the things that I've noticed, even with myself. Whenever I have this blinding bit of insight that I give to someone else, I then know that I have to take that on board, because that is not something that I currently do.
Now, how did gratitude come into all of this? Because a lot of your work in the book that you have coming up is related to gratitude. Because, I mean, we talk a little bit about how you got to now, but you suffered some other debilitating, spiritually and emotionally debilitating circumstances that could wreck many people. And you decided to dissect that and figure out how you can be prosperous and move forward in your own life as you move forward day to day. So what was that process for you?
Well, when I got back from Mexico, basically everything, I had no legs left. I was actually on the ground. And so everything that I knew got me there. So I had to do something different to get me out.
So when you say you had no legs after you come from Mexico, I mean, what shift
on the chair?
I understand that. Yeah, I got the metaphor, but I'm saying, you go on vacation or on holiday, as you guys would say, and you come back. What had changed? What had pulled that rug that snatched the legs from the chair?
That I wanted total change. So when I was in Mexico, I decided that my purpose in life was to liberate others. And then I started looking at how can I work with different client groups. So I started working with offenders. I was working with homeless people. And once I sort of stepped into that world, more things happened to me. And, I don't know if I hadn't have stepped in that world, whether those things would have happened. But anyway, they did. And so I was working with and spending a lot of time with people who had chosen a path that was alien to me. And so when gratitude arrived, I was searching for something, because I realized that I had to feel better in order for better to arrive.
Oh, can you please just say that one more time?
I had to feel better for better to arrive.
Oh, that's
so I couldn't feel like, the bottom of the shit pile and want to be and actually go, well, come on, success. Why aren't you here? Why aren't you coming? I had to already be successful. I had to already think that this is not where I am. I'm not actually homeless. I'm not working with a bunch of people who have made choices that I find difficult. I've just got to look at, I'm the best person I am at any point in time.
Awesome. Now, coming out of that, how did you figure out, hey, I have enough information that I can make eternal in the form of a book?
Oh my God, this is 22 years of practice. So I hadn't thought about writing a book until probably about 10 years ago. So all the time, one of the things about the gratitude practice is that, so in the beginning, I was doing my 5 a day. So these are you write your journal, you write your 5 things that you're grateful for a day. And in the beginning, I couldn't really understand what that was going to do for me, writing down my 5 things a day. And I call them the 5 a day. But I persevered. And then what really happened is that we start off doing a gratitude journal, which may be an intellectual activity. And it only really comes into being when we move into our heart and we start feeling the emotion of gratitude. Then things start happening to us.
Now, that is a really good point that you said, because you can be gratuitous in your mind, but you don't really feel it. You don't really own it. And I think that's what most people miss is understanding that feeling. So for someone who is right now listening to this and kind of rolling their eyes like, what are they talking about? I mean, I said I'm grateful, but the emotion of it?
I marry gratitude and appreciation together. Although they're separate, there is a continuum with them. And in a way, it's easier to talk about appreciation as a feeling. So when someone says to you, or they give you a present that you have been yearning for, and you open it up and you go, oh, wow. That is the feeling of appreciation in the moment. And it can also be feeling a gratitude that that person has gone out of their way to think about you, go shopping for you, and do the present that you really wanted.
Yeah, I didn't think of it
but
that way.
It doesn't. But really, the power. So I've given that as an external so that people. That's a sort of an experience that everyone has.
Yeah.
But actually, the real power is when you can do it all internally. So I can look out my window and see the sky, see the clouds, see the sun, and that fills me with appreciation.
You want to know when my best feelings of appreciation are? It's the first 5 minutes I get in bed at night.
Yeah,
and
I do that too.
And I'm so warm and snuggly, and I've just gotten out the shower, and my beautiful wife is next to me, chatting up a storm. And I'm wrapped in my little brown blankie that I've had for about 10 years. It always stays with me. And it's kind of like being in a cocoon. And in that moment, every night, I feel this warmth just ride over me. And I tense up. You know how I can't even explain it, but I know what you're talking about. And I'm trying to convey this for different levels of people so that they can understand what it is. It's kind of like a warm hug from the universe.
Yeah. But it's also from yourself.
Yes. But you feel it radiating. I feel it radiating when I go through that. It's literally like a tense, like I go, oh. She can see me. You guys can't see what I did, but it's really like a tense and a release. And there's these waves that happen. So I can identify with what you're saying.
Now, with those intensity and waves and feeling good, if you sort of then multiply that feeling when you're in bed to the 16 hours that you're awake, that is where you can be.
Yes, I'm really appreciative. I have a lot of things to appreciate. And most people, they're like, Emmett, why are you so happy all the time? I said, because I'm a brown man on earth. And they look at me like I am absolutely crazy. And they say, why? I says, I've experienced some things. And they're little bitty things. For instance, I remember I went to DJ a party. And I walked into this country club. And it was a very exclusive place. And I walked in the front door. And I had the historical memory of what would my father's experience at my age have been? What would my grandfather's experience at my age have been? So you feel appreciation. The fact that I can live just about anywhere I want to in the United States gives me appreciation. The fact that more often than not, I could be seen as a human being gives me great appreciation, because there's this conversation that people always have, and I look at them like they're absolutely nuts. They go, wouldn't you like to go back to the 50s? And I say, hell no.
Well, no.
And they say, why? I was like, think about it. I was like, that was a hard time for many people on this planet, in this country, and in several countries. I'm like, versus today, we are living in the future that we've dreamed about for millennium. I'm like, I have a watch that I can talk to my wife on. I'm like, I'm talking to a woman who is in Australia. I was like, technology is great, but now it's time for us to let our spiritual and emotional context catch up to our technology, because our technology has surpassed our human beingness. Now I've said that. So with the book, when did you produce it? I know it comes out in February, but what was your process?
We've got pre-ordering.
Okay.
Pre-ordering is opening next week, but I've also I can give people an extract. Or your listeners, I can give them an extract of the book so that they don't feel like they're missing out.
And where is it going to be published? Is it going to be available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble?
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be available to everyone in the world in February. But as I said, I'm going to give people, your listeners, an extract. So I call it 5 chapters, but I've actually given you 6 because I couldn't decide which ones.
How many chapters are total?
Well, I shouldn't really call them chapters because they're topics. So I've designed the book that over 50 topics. And there'll be some topics that you don't necessarily think about in terms of gratitude, like death, debt, grief. And yet there are other things like friends, family, trees, clouds, that you think, oh yeah, I've got that sorted. So every topic has got a little story, and it's got a story that tends to be about what happened to me, how I view, say, clouds. And then there are 3 exercises that you could do. Mm-hmm. And the idea is you don't read it from cover to cover, although, be my guest. The whole idea, and I've designed it this way so that you get the book and you go, I don't know what I want to do today. And you just open it up and you do the topic.
Oh, that's awesome.
There.
Yeah, that's a good concept.
So there'll be some topics that you will never see, whereas there'll be other, like another person will have a completely different set of topics that they actually open up and see every time.
That's awesome. What prompted you to literally put it down on paper?
Well, earlier this year, and this is the way I see the universe working, is that I was asked, 2 people asked me within 2 weeks why I hadn't written the book yet. Right? They didn't know what the book was going to be. They just asked me, why haven't you written the book yet? Now, I see that as the universe giving me little prompts to go, excuse me, time is ticking by. And I thought, okay. But this book, the gratitude book, I actually started writing in 2015 and didn't finish it. And I still haven't read that version of the book that I wrote in 2015. And what I thought I would do is something completely different to that. And I sat down and I brainstormed with myself a structure. And then I went on to Camp NaNoWriMo for July. And I set myself a target of 30,000 words in 30 days.
That's not bad. That's 1,000 words a day.
That's right. So, and it's now, the books are about sort of 43,000.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah. So that's what I did. And then you might think, well, why is it taking you all this time? And then editing, and there's a load of other stuff around writing the book. I now realize that writing the book is the easy bit. It's everything else that you've got to learn, particularly when I've not read it, I've not done a book before. So I've needed to learn about how do you do this? You know, what's good about traditional publishing to self-publishing? What are the different ways of doing self-publishing? And it's been a huge, huge journey. So that's why I'm here now.
But you learn a lot just trying things. And that's
absolutely.
It's one of the things I always say, try to fail. I mean, because you may do just the opposite and be a success. And success sometimes just means getting it done. Because most people are so on the fence. Well, I would like to, or I'll get to it, and then if you just do it and you say, oh, I did that, what's next? Because, you know, as you journey on the path of life, like the yellow brick road, every time you take a step, there's a new brick that reveals itself to you.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly right. Right. And that's what you did. So what are you going to do as far as promotion? Are you going, I mean, outside of like coming on the Great Billionaire Lifestyle podcast, are you going to go out and speak? Are you going to do any TED Talks? Because I could see you greatly on a TED Talk.
How interesting. I hadn't sort of thought about TED Talks next year. Next year, like 2019 is the year of the book. And I'm going to do a book tour, physical book tour, as well as a virtual book tour. And the physical book tour is really also about me reconnecting with the country I live in. So I've been back in Australia 4 years, and I haven't really ventured far and wide since I've been back. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be taking the book to towns that may not usually have a book tour rock up to them, and get to talk to people.
Gotcha.
Find out what's their life like.
You know, that is a great input for learning when you see the world through other people's perspective.
And, you know, that's where there'll be lots of stuff that will come out of that.
Now, I want to digress a little bit because, like I said, you've been through a great many hardships, or a few hardships that could really dismantle many people.
Yeah.
You know, you consciously said, I need to make a change. And you said, this marriage isn't part of that change. And many women do that. And so you said, okay, I'll just kind of carry on from there. But then you lost your job. And how did you sustain yourself during that time? Because you say you were homeless, you lost your job, but you look like you came through it pretty well.
Yeah. You just do what you need to do. Really. You know, what this is when I realized that, like you talked about the yellow road, and that each time you make a step, a new brick arrives, shows itself. And that's what I did. Whatever happened, I wasn't going to look to either side of me or behind. I was just going to take little steps, little baby steps each day, because that was the only way that I was going to get out of that. And it didn't matter what job I took. You know, it wasn't like I wasn't sort of going, oh, excuse me, but I was a CEO. I was thinking, okay, look, you know, I need to pay the rent. So I'll go and get a job to pay the rent. Yeah. You know, and stuff like that. And it didn't matter to me, because this is why I was working with a different client group. And so I didn't know that much about what I was doing. And for 7 years, I built myself up to being an interim manager with change in that sort of not-for-profit client area. Yeah. Before I returned back to marketing. And so, you know, little baby steps. And, you know, it's easy. It's always, this stuff is so easy to say. You know, it is so easy to say.
It is.
just take baby steps. And I remember, I can picture it, I can feel it now, my friends at the time were really scared for me. And they were saying, what if? And that was taking me away from looking ahead. All I wanted to do was to look ahead. And they were going, oh, what happens this? And what? And that was all distraction, because all I needed to do is to take a step each day, take another step. And then all of a sudden, well, not all of a sudden, but you realize that actually these steps have taken you a long way.
Yeah.
And you're changed. And you've just got to make sure when you take the baby steps that you listen to your heart. You listen to yourself. You don't listen to all the other well-meaning people who do care for you. But at the end of the day, they are not where you are. And you are here, wherever that is, and you've got to get yourself out. And it just is baby steps.
So during this,
even if you don't know where you're going, you just take as the next brick on the yellow road appears, you take that brick, and you take the next brick, and you take the next brick.
So during this time, you also lost your daughter as well.
Yeah.
And
well, fortunately, one of the things I didn't deal with when I was homeless. No one talks about when you're homeless, you are actually grieving, and people don't talk about that at all. And I've read a lot about homelessness, and it's never really addressed. It's never really discussed that there is a shame. There is also there's shame that you've actually fallen off the society train, and there's also the grief that you've lost the life that you did live. And because of that was my first experience of grief, and I didn't even know what it was. Every time I went in there, it was really cold and murky, and it was horrible. I tip my toe in, and I think, oof, God, I don't like that, and leave. And of course, that approach, and I know that other people treat grief like that too, actually lengthen it. It takes a lot longer to process your grief when you only dip your toe in every so often.
Yeah.
So when my daughter died, at that point, before my daughter died, I didn't know that what I was experiencing with the homelessness was grief. So I didn't know what it was like. So when she died, I remember driving, so this is all in the UK. So I remember driving my brother, who had just flown over from Australia. Driving him from the airport home, and I said, I've been here before, feeling like this, and I vowed that I would never put myself into the position where I would feel so desolate and so broken. And saying that was like the first time, that was the realization that homelessness, for me, experiencing homelessness was the same as, had the same impact as losing my daughter. And so I took my homeless experience and how I dealt with that and said, okay, I'm not going to deal with this like that. I'm going to sit in the grief. I'm going to actually look for the gems in the darkness. My daughter has gone, my best friend, my future has gone. I'm not going to be a grandmother. I'm not going to be mother of the bride. I'm not going to be all these things that I was looking forward to. So I need to find out, how is this, and believe me, this is how I approached it, even from after a month after she died. How am I going to learn from this? How is this going to be transformational? Because I knew from the homeless experience that the whole homeless experience, even though it took 10 years to process, was transformational. So I thought, I've really got to condense this experience, because I don't have another 10 years. I added 10 years onto my age, and I thought, look, no, forget it. I'm not going to take 10 years. Right. So I then decided that I would take as short a period of time as possible. And not because I didn't love my daughter, not because I didn't, I didn't want to actually grieve for her, but actually life is for living.
Yes, that's true.
And she would want me to live because she loved life. So she just died suddenly, right? So she didn't die of a disease, of cancer or anything. She partied too much one weekend, and died on a Sunday morning. Not as an overdose or anything, just died. And, and one of the things that the coroner, because there was obviously an autopsy, the police were involved, everything else, and the coroner took 6 months to actually declare the cause of death, which was, unexpected death.
Just unexpected death.
Yeah, unexpected death.
No.
So
no, like the toenail was broken. Oh, just
there was no mark on her. That was the thing. There was no mark on her.
Huh.
No mark. And so that was how. So by this time, my gratitude practice was about 17 years old. So I had moved from doing my 5 a day, moved through having an attitude of gratitude to being really a personality trait. So it was pretty much part of me. And what her death actually has done is move it down to a deeper level again, where it is really part of me. It's everything that I see, I perceive through the eyes of gratitude, through the lens of gratitude, through the lens of appreciation. And that's one of the legacies. So we talk about legacy of, certainly in Australia, it's like, what legacy you're going to leave your kids? And they're really sort of talking about money legacy.
Yeah, they
when
are.
Actually, my daughter left me such a huge legacy for her 22 years that I'm going to spend my whole life being grateful for the opportunities that she gave me.
Does it set you aside a little bit when you see people who don't appreciate the things that they have? What does that do to you? Or when you see people who are just kind of in this selfish, and I mean the negative selfish, because there's a good selfish too, but a negative selfish mode where it's just, they're not thinking about the world around them. It's only about them.
Well, that's unfortunately, that's actually quite a number of people. And I don't focus on that side. You might be surprised to know. What I look at is one of the markers, and this is a really nice way of looking at it. One of the markers of gratitude is people show up with kindness and generosity. So I actually look for kindness and generosity rather than, people, because, you can see it everywhere. People taking their life for granted, taking their kids for granted, taking their life for granted. And, that's okay. That's their choice. That's nothing for me. But what I really delight in is seeing kindness.
Yeah.
Generosity. It just makes my heart sing.
So this was a 20-year process. When you first experienced this, what age were you?
40.
Wow. Oh yeah, that's a turning point too. When you know, at that age.
That's why I wrote the book, though, because if it's taken me 20 years to get to me without any roadmaps, I wanted to actually provide. So one of the values that I can give, one of the legacies I can offer is a roadmap that will shorten other people's journey.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because that's a good thing, because, you know, so often people are lonely, or when people suffer something that they feel is a slight from society, where they deviate from what we call the norm, they're embarrassed about it. So they feel that they're alone too. Did you experience that loneliness? Like, I'm on an island and no one can see me.
Yes, several times through my life, you know, and the most recently was when my daughter died. You know, the way people were reacting to me was very clearly that I thought I was okay, but they were reacting to me that I was not okay.
Right.
And, so, and, you know, I wouldn't have been able to process it, but it would have been nice. It would be nice now to go back and actually interview those people as to what were they seeing that made them recoil from me, even though I was feeling like I was doing the best I could.
Yeah.
You know, in the first 6 months, you know, I was doing the best I could that I could possibly do. The worst thing that could possibly happen in my life had just happened, and I'm going to crochet circles. I'd never been to a crochet circle, and I do not go to crochet circles now, but I felt that that's one of the things that it would be safe to do.
Yeah. So when you became homeless, because this is a big question, and probably a question that everyone who's listening to this, you didn't have friends or family that could support you during this time?
Yeah, I did have some friends, and that was a really big thing, was that I had some friends who actually decided they were the ones who made me homeless. So I came back from Mexico. Right? Because as far as they're concerned, I was taking too long. So I came back from Mexico in the September, and so in their minds, by the end of December, I should have been sorted.
So what did they do? Did they say
they asked me that they gave me notice to leave?
Oh, wow.
And so there wasn't anything, like I wasn't earning enough money to to pay rent or anything. I was still rebuilding. And so that was how the homelessness arrived. And the irony is that the guy was actually a big person in homelessness.
How ironic. You know, this is one thing that I wanted to bring up, because there's this thing that I read years ago. They said that typically when women divorce, their lifestyle typically declines financially. I mean, like, that's normal.
Yeah.
But not so much for men.
No.
And there are no real support groups or shelters. I mean, they're hard to find or hard to place, particularly, you know, if you have a family. How old was your daughter at the time when this began to occur?
Well, I left them with their father because I thought I was strong. I was strong enough to be able to deal with anything that life had to throw at me. Mm-hmm. Right? Whereas if that had happened to my ex-husband, I felt that he would not cope very well. So I left him in the home and with the kids, even though I would be there 4 or 5 times a week. And so I sort of, in a way, I sort of thought I would be keeping everything in control and I did. So all the time that my kids were young, I was there. No matter what happened to me, I was there.
Yeah.
I was there picking them up from school. I was there at sports day. I was there at, concert days, and I took them to music lessons and everything else. It's just that I didn't always tuck them in.
Yeah.
And that was the price I paid. But the bigger price was that I don't know. See, at the time, I couldn't believe that all of the things that were happening to me. But now it all makes sense. So,
hindsight's 2020.
Now, it makes sense. Like, I wouldn't have been able to deal with my daughter's with the grief of my daughter if I had not been homeless, because I had no experience of grief before that.
None?
Well, yeah, some relatives had died, but nothing full blown as this.
Yeah.
Where, you realize your whole, when your mum and dad die, that to a certain extent, that's an expected death.
That's true.
If it's not okay, if they die when you're 10, that's a little bit of a blow. But if if they die when you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, that's an expected death. And so you're going to deal with it differently.
That's absolutely true. So what's the one thing that you could impart upon the Billionaire Lifestyle audience if someone came to you and just looked you in the eye and said, give me your wisdom? What would you say?
When you open up your eyes every morning, make your first thought, I am so glad I have my eyes open today because I get to experience another day.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast.
That's okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, you know how it ends, but do you know how it begins? It begins with you. It begins with you in the mirror, looking at yourself, or a reflection of yourself, a representation of you. Because I'm going to give you another bit. I want you to picture yourself as the highest being. You know that thing that talks in your head, but it doesn't move your lips? That thing that rings in your ear, but no one else can hear it. That is the higher you. There's someone who has a higher you, and they are their highest self. And you know what they are dealing with? Inside them are these little bitty cells. Hence the word self that comprises you. And those little cells, they get hungry. They mate and multiply and divide. They do their job. They go to work. They rest sometimes, and sometimes they go rogue. But the highest self of you, that one that's inside of that dome of yours, is the one that has control. And it is the one that can control all those little cells, the cells in your hands, the cells in your feet, to do things. That's the being part. We are people of color under the sun, in the image of man, human. And the best part is the experience. Because when you get to the end, now none of us really know, but you're going to get to the end and you'll meet some energy source. And you're probably going to say, why didn't I have X? And that energy source is going to say to you, you got a life. What you do with it is up to you. So, realize this. Your higher self has to love the complete self first before it can love anything outside of yourself. And when you see another self that is not you, treat it with love, honor, respect, and gratitude. Till next time, love you all. Peace.